Hi everyone, I'm Gary Null and I'd like to welcome you to this program. Today we are continuing with our series on Conversations with Remarkable Minds. We are going to talk about a philosophical exploration into food and farming as a condition for living as free human beings. My guest today is Wendell Berry. Now, how often do we hear the expression, a person of letters? That means a person of great intellect, reason, and literacy capable of articulating their thoughts in a wide variety of modalities, such as fiction, essays, poems, history commentaries. Well, Wendell Berry is one of America's most recognized men of letters, as well as one of the earlier pioneers and farmers of organic sustainable agriculture in the modern era. What Wendell has written about for almost 40 years, ignored as a Luddite at the time, is now the norm among the environmental opponents of big agricultural and food industries. He's regarded by many as the grandfather of the slow food movement, and his philosophical thought and inspired stories on land, agriculture, and food have been a major muse for people like Bill McKibben and Michael Pollan and Barbara Kingsover. Wendell's written over 50 books in tomes, including novels, novellas, and stories, nonfiction works, poems, and essays. And after teaching English at New York University, he purchased a farm and Lane's Landing in rural Kentucky. And while periodically teaching at the University of Kentucky, he also served as a base commune with the land and the art of farming, with the purity of food in mind, and to be inspired philosophically over our nation's humanity relationships to the soil, the food, and the wildlife and nature, and the importance of nurturing community. He's won a lot of awards: T.S. Eliot and Gene Stein Awards, the Michael Merton Award, the Kentuckian of the Year, the Guggenheim Fellowships, and others. He is the author of Bringing It to the Table on Farming and Food. Nice to have you with us today, Wendell Berry.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I think you've oversold me a little bit, but I appreciate it.
Well, I'd like for us to go through your philosophy of living, and let's begin with just a brief overview. I'll give the overview, then you take your time without any interruptions from me, and put together your insights, your experiences, okay?
Well, I'll do my best.
All right. I'm of the belief that today we cannot sustain our current lifestyles with over-congestion in major metropolitan areas, especially those at sea level, in New York, Washington, and down the East Coast, and in L.A. and other places on the West Coast, because of rising sea levels over the next, not 100 years, but now we're told over the next 5 to 10 years, getting into the aquifers and getting into the subsections of buildings and tunnels and subways. We also, I believe, have made ourselves over-reliant on genetically modified foods, especially soy, corn, wheat, and others, and at the exclusion of nurturing biodynamic and bioavailable and sustainable organic produce locally. I also believe that we have put an enormous amount of our good quality farmland into biofuels, and that both the economics of scale are wrong to do that. We do not have an economic savings, but it also takes then land out of production for healthy foods. Now, when you have all that on one side, and much of that being led by the major big corporate farm interest like Cargill and Archer Midland Daniels, and on the other side you have 40 million Americans as of today, the day we're talking on the air, are now considered so poor that they are also hungry. That means they're not getting enough food each day to supply their body's needs. 12 million of them are children. This is in the United States. That's more than all the people living in the state of California. On top of all that, the fact that we are poorer than we've been since 1936, We have more land being taken out of production of locally grown foods that we could use into biofuels. We now have a perfect storm of the environment where dust storms, the desertification of the West is increasing at a very rapid rate. Today, for example, in Australia, and yesterday, they had so much sand in the air in one of their major cities that people couldn't even see to drive. And this is one person who had lived there for 74 years said had never happened before in his lifetime. Australia is really hard hit, but also California is hard hit. They're in a permanent drought. Texas has the worst drought in the state's recorded history. Arizona, Nevada, New Mexico, Oklahoma, South Dakota, Utah, all in the midst of massive droughts, and where more and more land is no longer able to be used for sustainability because the water is not there, yet massive amounts of people are living in these areas, and as a result there's not enough water for the people living in the cities like Los Angeles, and the food being produced, including the San Joaquin Valley, and for industry. We simply do not have enough natural resources, including water, for what we have been doing up to this point. Now, when you look at all this that I've just laid out, and that's why I said it's a big canvas to paint from, I would like for you to go through this as you can and show us how we can resolve many of these problems in ways that will reharmonize our actions and activity with natural cycles, and how we should be looking at how we can live in cooperation with nature instead of this constant manifest destiny of conquering nature at all costs. The forum is yours. Take your time.
Well, in spite of your confidence in me, I'm not sure that I can remember all of that, and I certainly can't represent myself as somebody who knows how to solve all the problems. But I think as a beginning, it would be a good idea to say that we need to structure our economic life as a proper pyramid. That is, with nature at the bottom and the land economies of human beings, that is farming, ranching, forestry, mining, those things, as the next layer. And the next layer, manufacturing or processing, and at the top, the economy of consumption. What we've done in the last several decades is make a perfect inversion of that pyramid. We have a huge population of consumers who are mostly helpless to do anything essential for themselves, and who are ignorant of the cultural and natural sources of their lives, and who are totally dependent, passively dependent, on a tiny number of land users at the bottom. So what we have is a very tippy pyramid, and even if we had no problem with global warming, which I take for granted that we do, we would still be in trouble with because we've balanced this enormous population on the work of too few people. And the work of those people, because they are so few, has to do chiefly with making the land produce, and very little really in maintaining the productive capacity of the land. So that is a great problem, and I don't have the solution to it. I don't think there is a simple solution to it, and I would be suspicious of any simple solution or any simpleton who offered one.
Well, give us